All right, good morning, good morning, good morning, and Yahweh bless you, and welcome to another chapter of our daily bread. Today we'll be reading in chapter 26 of Exodus about the tabernacle. Last time we talked about the golden lampstand, the Ark of the Covenant, and the showbread. So this portion of our reading is dealing with the tabernacle itself and all the components in it. So let's continue our reading. Now today I won't be stopping a lot to make a lot of comments. This is just going to be a lot of description of the tabernacle, and I'll show some pictures of it, but I don't plan to make a lot of stops because I really don't have a lot more to say as I studied out myself. So let's go ahead and pick up here as we let the Word of God saturate our spirits and see what He wants to say to us and to you personally. And verse 1. Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet yarns. You shall make them with the cherubim, skillfully worked into them. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. Remember we talked about cubits being the length of one's forearm, and I did underline the word skillfully worked. I love the detail in which Yahweh describes His desires for something. He doesn't simply say, just put this together. He says, I want this skillfully done. And in other parts of the text in Exodus, you'll find that He gifted men and women with the specific ability to be able to craft in such a special way. Because these crafts weren't necessarily easy and something one could just pick up and do according to the way He wanted, especially when He says, I want them skillfully worked in, these cherubim, those angel like pieces. Now I want to give you a glance at the tabernacle so that you'll have an understanding of the big picture of what we're talking about. I'll try to include this. I'm still learning the software, but I'll try to include a picture of this as we're reading. That way we can have a visual to refer back to as we're reading. But here's the tabernacle. Actually, I'm gonna go to that one first. So we've looked at this one before. The tabernacle is going to include this whole piece. And if you want to see how big it is in relation to something we're familiar with, here's a football field, and here's the tabernacle. So this is wider and longer than the football field. So can imagine that if you entered this place, it's huge. And you get the sense of awe as you look around and see all that's going on. We're going to talk about the different layers of the tabernacle, the different types of skins that were used. You can see down here 9 through 12. Badger skin was used, a ram skin, goat hair skin, and fine linen. With the fine linen being on the inmost part of the tabernacle. You see also in here the Ark of the Covenant, which is where we began our discussion, which I thought was interesting. As I read some more commentary and background on this, I didn't notice that, yes, in describing the whole tabernacle, we started with the Ark of the Covenant. That's what He wanted to start with. And from the Ark of the Covenant, we went to the showbread and to the lamps, which again could suggest that these are some of the most important items that Yahweh thinks of when He starts describing the tabernacle. He could have started with what many of us would have done, maybe geometrically, with the shape around and start filling it up. But He started from the very most end part, the Holy of Holies, and start to radiate out. Now He didn't continue to go out with the other items inside. He went the Ark of the Covenant, the showbread, the lights, and then now we're describing the whole tabernacle. And we're going to eventually go back in to describe some of the other things. So I think that starts to suggest what's important to Yahweh as He describes it. One thought could be that one commentator mentioned is you start with the Ark of the Covenant, of course, being the center of where Yahweh supposedly sits. Of course, He can't sit or stand there, but this is where the most inmost part and Holy of Holies, the most special part of the tabernacle is. So it's like the heart of the whole thing. Matter of fact, speaking of heart, someone described the components of the whole tabernacle and all its pieces to that of a cell, and the nucleus of that cell being the Ark of the Covenant, and from there it radiating out to the covering being the rough endoplasmic reticulum. It depends on how much into science you are to really appreciate some of these descriptions and comparisons, but it seems pretty close to some of the components of the cell and their functions. So I thought that was interesting. All right, but going back to our view here, we talked about how we're going outside and then coming back in to probably the items that are still important, obviously, but in order of importance. So the ark, the showbread, which probably represents life, the bread of life, the word of Yahweh, and of course the lamps being the light. So the Ark of the Covenant, Yahweh himself, the bread of life, and then a light. So those things are obviously really important, and we radiate from there. Let's continue our reading as we keep this picture in mind and keep some of the things we mentioned in mind and how he built it. In verse 2, the length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. All the curtains shall be the same size. 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another, and the other 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another. So this tabernacle was really split into 2, but they were all joined together, coupled together, if you will. So you had 2 halves. And you shall make loops of blue on the edge of the outermost curtain in the first set. Likewise, you shall make loops on the edge of the outermost curtain in the second set. 50 loops you shall make on the one curtain, and 50 loops you shall make on the edge of the curtain that is in the second set. The loops shall be opposite one another. And you shall make 50 clasps of gold, and couple the curtains one to the other with the clasps, so that the tabernacle may be a single whole. You should also make curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. 11 curtains shall you make. The length of each curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. The 11 curtains shall be the same size. You shall couple 5 curtains by themselves and 6 curtains by themselves, and the 6th curtain you shall double over at the front of the tent. So there was an extra curtain at the front and the back that it will hang over. You shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in the second set. You shall make 50 clasps of bronze, and put the clasp into loops, and couple the tent together, that it may be a single whole. And the part that remains of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remains, shall hang over the back of the tabernacle, and the extra that remains in the length of the curtains, the cubit on the one side and the cubit on the other side, shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle, on this side and that side, to cover it. And you shall make for the tent a covering of tanned ram skins and a covering of goat skins on top. You shall make upright frames for the tabernacle of acacia wood. 10 cubits shall be the length of a frame, and a cubit and a half the breadth of each frame. There shall be 2 tenons in each frame for fitting together. So shall you do for all the frames of the tabernacle. You shall make the frames for the tabernacle, 20 frames for the south side. 40 bases of silver you shall make under the 20 frames. 2 bases under one frame for its 2 tenons. So 2 bases for one frame. Let me see if I can get the... Okay, the frames we're not going to be able to see so well in this picture because it's the actual structure that these skins are surrounding. But you get the idea. It's kind of like you have some poles with 2 bases at the bottom supporting each one of them. Let's see here. And you should make 2 frames for the corners of the tabernacles in the rear. They shall be separate beneath, but joined at the top and at the first ring. Thus it shall be with both of them. They shall form the two corners, and there shall be 8 frames, with their bases of silver, 16 bases, 2 bases under one frame, and 2 bases under another. You shall make bars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames of one side of this tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the side of the tabernacle in the rear west. The middle bar, halfway up the frame, shall run from end to end. You shall overlay the frames with gold, and you shall make the rings of gold for holders for the bars, and you shall overlay the bars with gold. Then you shall erect the tabernacle according to the plan for it that you were shown in the mountain. And you shall make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet yarns and fine twined linen. It shall be made with cherubim skillfully worked into it. And you shall hang it on 4 pillars of acacia, overlaid with gold, with hooks of gold, and 4 bases of silver. And you shall hang the veil from the clasp, and bring the ark of the testimony in there within the veil. And the veil shall separate for you the holy place from the most holy. You shall put the mercy seat on the ark of the testimony in the most holy place, and you shall set the table outside the veil, and the lampstand on the south side of the tabernacle opposite the table, and you shall put the table on the north side. You shall make a screen for the entrance of the tent of blue and purple. It's interesting that blue, purple, and scarlet yarns and fine twined linens. Why blue? Why purple? Why scarlet and fine twined linens? Like, these are not just items that he said, get what you can to do the job. They're not just functional items. These are items of aesthetic beauty and symbolism. He's wanted to represent something. And it needs to be that color and that fine twined linen, embroidered with needlework. I mean, this is excruciatingly meticulous to create this. It's not something that, because I keep saying this because in my mind, and especially people talk about it as men, as opposed to women, men can be more functional in our design and saying, well, it works, so let's just go with that. It does work. It does the job, which means my job is to cover it up and to keep it protected from the rain and all these types of things. It's functional. A woman usually looks at things differently and asks, how beautiful is it? How can it be attractive to my eyes and feel comfortable? And you see that aspect here with Yahweh when he's making it both functional and aesthetically beautiful. But there's also some symbolism in what he's doing. And probably that of which we'll never understand, but some we can probably gather, which I'll mention here in just a second. In verse 37, and you shall make for the screen 5 pillars of acacia, and overlay them with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold, and you shall cast 5 bases of bronze for them. Now, it reminds me of a scripture. Like, why all the details? Let me see if I can find it. All right, as I mentioned a second ago, these items, Yahweh continues to say, according to the pattern I taught you. Why specifically blue, red, and why? It's as if he has a construction in his mind of exactly how it's supposed to be. If you look in Hebrews chapter 8, we kind of get a glimpse as to what he's talking about and why it's this way. It says, now the point of what we are saying is this: we have such a high priest, one who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the Majesty in heaven, and minister in the holy places, in the true tent that the Lord set up, not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer gifts and sacrifices. Thus it is necessary for the priest also to have something to offer. Now if he were on earth, he would not be a priest at all, since there are priests who offer gifts according to the law. They serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly things. Listen to that. So in this time, as he's speaking, obviously in the New Testament and Hebrews here, he's saying there are priests who do this. For when Moses was we'll go back a little bit. Now, if it were on earth, If he were on earth, he would not be a priest at all. Why? Since there are priests who offer gifts according to the law. They serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly things. That's the key there. These things are actually a copy of the heavenly things, the copy and shadow of the heavenly things. Now, some have taken it to mean that since it is a copy, then it's a copy or a shadow, that it's no longer relevant. But the fact that it's a shadow and a copy is pointing to, again, it was supposed to be symbolizing something, it's pointing to something from which the shadow came from, that's in heaven. So, and it also points to the fact that this exists. This is a shadow. Not was a shadow. So it's serving currently, definitely at this time, as a shadow and a copy of what's already there. For when Moses was about to erect the tent, he was instructed by God, saying, "See that you make everything according to what? The pattern that was shown you on the mountain." But as it is, Christ had obtained a ministry that is as much more excellent than the old as the covenant he mediates is better, since it is enacted on better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, there would have been no occasion to look for a second. So why the second covenant? Why the New Testament covenant, as we tend to call it now? It says, well, it was at fault. Well, of course, the covenant that he created didn't have fault. There was nothing wrong with what he created. There was something wrong with the people and how they put on that plate, put it into practice. Some even believe and go so far as to suggest that because the old covenant we're focusing on the new covenant, then the Old Testament laws in which are found in the old covenant is no longer applicable. But if you study this out a little bit more and read carefully, he's talking about the covenant, which represents the promise and the relationship with the people, not the laws themselves. The laws never change. That's why Yahshua, Jesus, would still say in the New Testament that I'm not breaking the laws. I'm not here to demolish or get rid of those laws. Now the covenant changed because now we have a new high priest, Yahshua himself, under better promises. So the promises are even better now for us in the new covenant. So that's something worth noting. Also, if you go to, see if I can give here, Colossians 2, 16, 17 area, it says, "Therefore let no one pass judgment on you in question of food and drink, or with regard to a festival or new moon or Sabbath." Why? These are a shadow of the things to come. These are a shadow of the things to come. These instructions and these structures that he put in place were done so for a reason. Remember the prayer that says, "Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven." See, everything that we're experiencing, we're supposed to be living out and experiencing, is almost as a dress rehearsal for the way things are going to be. And for the way things are already in heaven, we're supposed to be living that copy now. So that prayer we're praying, may it be done, may your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, his will is trying to be done, even in the construction of his tabernacle and the lifestyle of his subjects of his kingdom. So keep that in mind, that let no one pass judgment on you with the food and drink, regard to festivals and new moons or Sabbath. If the idea of new moons and Sabbaths are new to you, then that's worth looking into and saying, what does that mean? Because he says these are shadows and copies of what things are going to be. Now, keep in mind, again, it does not mean that they were shadows and they're no longer applicable. He says they are. They are to continue to be implemented and exercised because they are shadows. These are the things I want you to be in practice. Again, almost like a dress rehearsal. That's why in the Old Testament, with the laws of observe Sabbath and such, was never abolished, and so many of these other things. So people were questioning what they're drinking, what they're eating. Is that kosher? Is it have to be? Was that sacrificed to an idol? He says these items I still want you to keep in place, because they symbolically are representing that which is in heaven and which is going to come. So I believe that is worthy of a big note. So I want to close up here. We just discussed the tabernacle. Pull up this picture again. So we described the whole tabernacle. Wonderful place. You cannot, and I love Yahweh again for how detailed He is, and He created boundaries around this whole place. You cannot accidentally run into the Holy of Holies. You cannot accidentally run into the Tabernacle. You knew that you were in the, like if you came from a different nation and you came to this place, you knew this place was special. And because of their understanding of gods and worship, they would have known that there is something here special for some God. They got the sacrifices area. You have the tent, and you knew something was going on. So Yahweh made it obvious that there's something special here. And when you come to this Holy of Holies, you don't come just anyway. All right, guys, much love to you. I want to close up on that thought, and pray that you have a blessed day. May Yahweh bless you and your family and keep you as always. Amen.